everyone. This is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I got an amazing guest. His name is AJ Cansada. And AJ owns a company called Revenue Boost. They're at revenueboost.net. We're going to talk in depth about how do you do LinkedIn and email marketing the right way. I've met AJ and had numerous conversations with him on this subject. He's a gentleman who's, I would say, I highly respect in this field. We're going to talk about how do you create the list, how do you create the copy, how do you do the follow-up, how do you set the appointment, and how do you do it without being slimy or spammy, and how do you gain more clients through this process. Remember, the master prospector will always outsell the master closer. Speaking of that, if you want to increase your sales revenue, optimize that sales revenue for yourself or your team, whether you're an independent business professional or you have a sales team and own a company and you want to boost that revenue and do it in a predictable way, or your follow-up skills are okay, but you need a technology and a tool to do that, reach out to me directly at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com and let me know what you're looking for. We'll have a conversation. Let's go talk to AJ. Let's boost your profits right now, boost your revenues right now, and start turning your people into a master prospector. Here we go. Hey, AJ, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I'm so grateful you're here today.
Hey, Doug. Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to chatting today.
And we're going to talk in depth about LinkedIn and email marketing and outbound reach. Are we not?
Absolutely.
And why don't you give everybody kind of your background? Let's set the frame for this call.
Yeah, for sure. So what I do now is I run Revenue Boost, which is a B2B marketing lead generation agency, which really just focuses on cold outreach. How I got into this is technically I got into cold outreach 11 years ago when I started knocking on doors, because that's, I look at cold email, LinkedIn, knocking on doors, cold calling, all under that same umbrella of outreach. And I was pretty much just a broke college kid. I got a job doing door knocking for a construction company, ended up finding a knack for sales and actually dropping out of school to work full-time, building sales teams, door knocking teams. Did that for 5-6 years. By the time I was 23, I had all this experience. It was really a lot of fun, but I also didn't want to be doing like door knocking and yeah, just wanted to move on to something a little bit less brutal, right, than the door-to-door sales. So I started a marketing agency, started just really teaching myself digital marketing, going to events, masterminds, all that. And then I kind of realized like, okay, I can take this outbound thing that worked for me and that I know really well, and then to translate that into digital marketing. And what that looked like was LinkedIn and email, right? Reaching out to people over email versus giving someone a call or knocking on their door, right? Way more scalable, allows me to sit behind a computer, and there's a lot of other really exciting benefits and advantages to getting into cold outreach on LinkedIn, email, and other online platforms, which we're going to talk about today. But that led to me starting Revenue Boost. And yeah, also fun fact is I live in Vietnam. I left to travel abroad a couple of years ago and then have not come home yet.
Everybody's dream. I want to travel. I want to have a lifestyle where I'm, not geographically bound. Most people's dream, right? And
yeah.
So I want to go to this thing about staying behind the computer, because what I want people to understand is that you were door knocking. You were actually out there prospecting, selling while you were doing it. And then when people start to think, well, I can get behind a computer and I can send messages through LinkedIn or I can send messages through email, it's going to be different than actually prospecting, right? And I want to ask you from the master's standpoint on your side, should we treat this differently or should we treat this the same? Because I would personally say we need to treat this just as seriously as we were knocking on doors and expect that we still have to do the work. It's just not, you're going to sit there, send some emails or messages and poof, everybody's going to now start booking your calendar left and right.
Yeah, for sure. It's not easy. I would say it comes with a different kind of heart. At least with door knocking or cold calling, you face that physical rejection, right? Of someone telling you to your face to go screw off, right? I don't know if we curse in this podcast or not, but so at least it's the rejection is easier when you're doing outbound online, right? Because you just don't deal with that, right? But it's harder in other ways because now tech's involved, now automation's involved, and it's just hard as well to stand out nowadays because Even since COVID, the amount of cold emails I've received has like tripled. And I think that's largely a function of a lot more people are doing outbound now, which also I don't mean to start the podcast of saying that it's super hard and negative, right? It's an amazing opportunity. However, that's also why a lot of other people are doing it, which makes it hard because you have to stand out. A lot of other people are doing outbound now because, first of all, the tools have gotten easier. It's so much easier now to spin up an outbound campaign, use a cold email tool like instantly, and within an hour, you can have emails going out to your target market, right? So it's easier to do. It's hard to do well.
Right.
Because it's so easy now, everyone's doing it. Prospects get more jaded, and now you have to be more creative to stand out. I also think the whole ads getting more expensive, and really like, so if you look the way I think about generating business online, there's outreach, there's content like inbound, and then there's paid ads, right? And the other two have also had their problems over the last few years. Organic reach has went way down on most of the platforms we've used, right? It's not as easy to build an audience anymore, although still worth doing, of course. And then ads, the price of CPMs and paid ads have went way up over the last few years. And for some, especially if you're a B2B business and you have a very niche audience, it just doesn't even make sense. Like a lot of times you just can't really reach them effectively with ads. So all those things happening, and there's a lot more people to outbound. So it's a great time, but it's for sure like not meant to be easy. Now you really have to compete.
Yeah, and I want people to please understand this because I don't want them thinking like, oh, I'll just, go hire an agency and I'll sit back and the leads are going to roll in and and my calendar is going to be filled up and everything's magically going to happen, right? Because this is the way a lot of people are pitching that service.
Yeah,
Right. And the reality is no, it's not, very few people become multimillionaires or decamillionaires by just sitting back and letting things roll in, folks. So that's, if you're going to be doing any type of outbound, it's going to be similar rule. Remember, online came from offline,
yeah,
right? And so although there's some ease of being able to do things online, the concept of human to human communication and the way people act and react are going to be similar across the board, no matter what medium we use.
for
And
sure.
that's what I want people to please understand. So, all right, I'm gonna come in this from a person. I don't know anything about this, AJ. I don't even, what's LinkedIn? I just got online on email. What do? I just start sending messages? How does this all work out? What's the keys to success and what's the first step, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So really there's only three parts of the process, which is nice. There's only three things you really have to more or less optimize and iterate on. You build a list, you write the copy and send that copy out, and we'll talk about how. And then you follow up with the leads, meaning some leads are going to reply with questions, some leads are going to say, yes, I'm interested. And that part you need a human to follow up with and add a personal touch to book them into your calendar. So that last part is important. I bring that up because I wouldn't look at this like a funnel where you send out an email, then calls just appear in your calendar. The wrong way to do cold outbound is to try to drive traffic. Whenever I get an email and there's a link to book something or pay for something, it's like no one really like that's just so much less effective, especially now. And also, if you think about email, people are scared to open a link from a stranger in email. What if there's a virus, right?
Right.
And also, you're going to be penalized for deliverability. So, really, like that brings me to the first principle. The right way to do it is to try to drive a conversation, not a conversion right away. An example of that would be your email should end with a question, right? Like, hey, are you having this problem? Or hey, can I send you some more information? Not, hey, do you have 60 minutes tomorrow? Or hey, do you want to hire us, right? Because at the end of the day, someone just read your email 5 seconds ago, how they're not going to have the trust to buy a high ticket thing from you, right? So I look at breaking up the sales process into many steps. If we think about the sales process as point A to point B, point A is I don't know you, point B is I'm giving you money. Think about everything. Think about that there's a bunch of steps in between that, right? So try to make the first step just a really, really small step, which is getting a reply, and optimize for getting a reply. And we can talk about copywriting as well. And we can even come up with maybe some examples for different businesses. But at the end of the day, your email or your LinkedIn message should just be really driving intrigue and curiosity for them to reply. You're not trying to educate them. You're not trying to sell. You're not trying to persuade because they didn't ask you to do that. It's cold outreach. But if you can start a conversation the same way that you might start a conversation at a networking event or something similar, it's going to be much more likely. So at the end of the day, just get someone to reply. Once they reply, you can move to the next step, which is let's have a call, right? But at the end of the day, you're pretty much asking for the reply. And that's why you mentioned before that online comes from offline. That's what I learned in the offline world. So I used to go door to door selling house painting, which I know sounds like something crazy, like out of a movie, like just sounds ridiculous, right? But we would sell, yeah, I worked for a large construction company and I was handling the house painting side. So if I went up to someone and I was like, hey, Jim, I see that your house hasn't been painted in a while. Would you like to hire us? It's going to be 10 grand to paint it, which, believe it or not, in New York, that's what some of these houses cost to paint. Um, that wouldn't work because it's like, I just met you, get off my lawn, you interrupted my dinner, right? But so instead of me going for the sale, I went for the reply. So I would say, hey, Jim, I see that I see that the house maybe hasn't painted in a while. I'm going to be down the road because we're doing a few projects in your neighborhood. Could I come by next weekend, and just give you an analysis, give you a quote? And that worked 1,000 times better. So that's what I learned about really breaking up the sales process into different steps. And you got to realize when you're doing outbound, you're kind of like, they didn't ask for you to contact them, right? So when you go in with the hard sell, it just is always perceived the wrong way. So your goal is to get a reply, get a conversation, then you can move that conversation to a conversion. But those are really the 3 steps. You build a list, which we can talk about how you write the copy and send it out. And then you just follow the people that are interested and book them onto your calendar.
So I used to do a ton of cold calling early on in my career. And someone once told me, what is the purpose of a cold call? And so they asked this in a group format, and a lot of people said, well, it's to make a sale, right? And this person said, no, the purpose of a cold call is to get it to the second step of the cold call. You're looking to get an appointment, not a sale. And that's exactly what I'm hearing from you. So we're breaking it down into steps, the whole sales process into steps. So first is we've got to establish some type of relationship. The next might be to, set the next step for, like you said, could I come by and show you what we may do,
Exactly.
So when starting this process, we recommend to everybody, look, sit down and look at your sales process, how you want the sales process to flow, break it down into steps, then apply your 3 steps to that subset of the, well, those are the overarching. So, what are the sales process steps that fit into those 3 steps that you have? Is that an accurate way to look at it?
100%, yeah. And for a lot of people, maybe the first big step in their sales process is a call or a consultation or a demo, whatever you want to call it, or a strategy call, right? I know that's the buzzword these days.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever, if the first major step of your sales process is a call, then the step before a call is getting someone to agree to a call, someone to say, yes, I'd like to make time for this, right? So your outbound should be getting people to that point, right? That's really the first step, is getting them to agree, I'd like to hear more about this, right? And then from someone being a lead to a call is another step, right? Because you might say, let's say you get 20 leads from sending out LinkedIn DMs or cold emails. They say, I want to have a call with you. Only half of them might actually book in. They get distracted along the way, or they lose interest or whatever. So you still have to nurture them even to be like, hey, book that call in, right? But yeah, whenever, and this is how I just think about anything in sales or marketing, there's always a series of steps. You could break it down as granular as you like, but you just have to see where are people getting held up, right? And for most businesses, I feel like the hardest part is the top of the funnel. Most people just have a hard time getting that person interested in the first place. So that's really what Outbound is. It's a top of funnel tool to bring people in who don't know you.
So let's talk about top of funnel, because I agree with you. Most people, and it makes me laugh because so many people are focused on back end of funnel, right? And it's like the top of the funnel is actually the challenge. So it's kind of like, let's pour some, I don't know, watery gasoline into our vehicle, and we can't understand why it's sputtering and not running.
Yeah.
Right. So when you say top of the funnel, could you kind of give people an understanding of what the top of the funnel actually means, and how to apply success to that top of the funnel?
Yeah, absolutely. So top of funnel really is your first interaction with a potential customer. It's really when you go from someone who doesn't know you to them doing something, either responding to an email or opting in, or even booking a call, right? In terms of what the marketing terminology means, there's top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And it comes from, the model comes from, and I didn't invent this, but the model comes from a funnel. Like if you imagine a funnel, it's wide at the top, skinny at the bottom. right? Everything gets poured in at the top and then it funnels down to the bottom, right? Whatever the liquid or gasoline is. And as you see, it gets more narrow at the bottom because people drop off, right? You only have a little bit of, that little bit of width at the bottom compared to the big wide top where you're pouring it in. And that's what happens in marketing. No matter what you sell, the first interaction, the ad, the email, the outreach message, the cold call, the content you're doing on social media, it's going to bring in, let's just imagine that some marketing campaign you do brings in 1,000 people who see your business and are considering you, right? Well, only a fraction of those people will go to the next step, which might be consideration, right? So another way that this is framed is awareness is in top of the funnel, second, middle of the funnel is consideration, right? So out of everyone who becomes aware of your business, only some of them are actually going to consider you and then maybe take the next step, which could be a call, it could be download a white paper, it could be anything like that, right? Whatever, something where they're spending more time with you, right? Bottom of the funnel is when they're making a purchase decision. Only a certain percentage of people that go down to the consideration stage are going to actually be close to a purchase, right? And some people are just going to be like, oh, this is not for me, or get lost along the way. Those are like the leads you didn't close or the calls that didn't buy, right? So it gets narrower and narrower. With every step in the sales process, it gets narrower and narrower. And only a certain percentage of people buy at the end, right? So when we're talking about cold emails at the top of the funnel tool, you shouldn't be cold emailing people saying, hey, buy this, because they don't even know like anything about you, right? They're not even in that consideration stage. They're just becoming aware of you. So treat them, basically the whole idea is you want to meet them where they're at, right? So everything in your marketing strategy should be based on, is this top of funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel? Am I trying to talk to someone who's ready to buy and I'm just giving them that final nudge? Or am I trying to talk to someone who doesn't know me and I need to make them aware of the problem myself, right?
So our communication needs to be matched at the level that they're at within the sales process.
Absolutely. Everybody who ever buys anything, whether it's ice cream, whether it's, sales coaching, whether it's outbound, no matter what you buy, you go through what's called the buyer's journey, right? You go through a series of steps from when you weren't thinking about that product or service to then actually putting your credit card in and buy, right? And what most people try to do is they assume everyone in their market's ready to buy and they talk to them at that level, right? For example, if I send you an email saying, hey, Doug, we sell cold outbound services, here's the 10 benefits and here's why we're different than the competition. That's not really going to land for you because that's assuming that you're ready to buy and you just need like to compare vendors, right?
Right.
And really people say that there's only 3 to 5% of any given market that's actually ready to buy. That's actually already at the bottom of the funnel, right?
Yeah.
So you want to meet people where you're at. When you speak more to people at the top of the funnel, then more people are going to actually pay attention to your message, right? And how that might look different is maybe talking about the problem, not the product, right? So if I say, hey, Doug, you run this business, you probably need leads, right? Or maybe you're looking for other lead sources besides ads, right? That's talking about a problem that a lot of people can relate to. And that's going to get me a lot of more people aware and paying attention and moving to that consideration stage versus talking about the benefits of my offer when who knows if you haven't even acknowledged you have a problem yet, right?
Makes total sense. We're speaking with Mr. AJ Casada. Company is revenueboost.net. And we're having a discussion on or around LinkedIn and email, which we haven't even specifically talked deeply about, but this is so important. The rules of this process, if you don't play by the rules, folks, you're going to be kicking the ball into your own goal, so to speak. And it's not what you want to do. So AJ, based on our conversation, then I guess the identification of the top of the funnel, the actual target of who we want to communicate with is paramount to the success of any campaign then, or any type of process. Like, you were knocking on doors selling painting. You're probably not going to, well, maybe you would, I don't know that business well, but I would assume that if I had vinyl siding on the side of my house, you're probably not going to knock on my door and ask me if you want me to paint, you paint my vinyl siding, right? Because vinyl siding.
Exactly. That would be akin to selling meat to a vegan, right? It's just not likely to happen no matter how good you are at sales. So, and that's exactly what we would do. When we would map out the neighborhoods that we wanted to target for our construction services, we would look for neighborhoods with wooden homes and also neighborhoods that had older homes because they're more likely to have rotten wood or just need a lot of upkeep, right? So yeah, that's pretty basically, yeah, just being very, very targeted with who you're reaching out to in the first place is definitely a very important outbound principle.
Okay, but I find a lot of people, they don't really take that into consideration. And I mean, maybe you find differently, but what I find is, I just looked in, Harvard did the study. Wharton School of Business did this study. I believe Marketo, HubSpot, a couple others. They all did a study on this, and it showed that 97% of anyone who's selling does not know in full or in part their ideal right fit buyer.
That's not
And
surprising. That's pretty shocking, but I mean, I totally understand.
so if they don't know their ideal right fit buyer, to me, that sounds like we've got to get that clear, because otherwise we're sending messages out. It's like, walking out trying to find a mate in life, and we don't know what we want for that person. So we just see an attractive person and we go, oh, that's her or that's him.
Yeah.
Right? Um,
Yeah.
that probably is partially why the divorce rate is so high, because people don't really think that through. So if we get that clear, then we know what list to put together, going back to your steps. And then let's go to copy, because this is one that I think people are like, what do I say, dude? That type of thing.
Yeah.
So how should they approach the copy component of this, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's email or both?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's quite similar, right? And I'm also just really glad you harped on the ICP part, because yeah, if you don't know what you're after, how do you expect to get it, right? It's like driving from Florida to California and just hoping that you end up somewhere in California that you like, and not even having a map in the first place, right? So yeah, really, really important to identify your best fit buyers. Simple exercise on that is look in your CRM, right? Look at your data. And if you're a newer business, and you don't really have CRM data, just list out your past clients, right? What do they have in common, right? And not just all your past clients. Who are your best clients? Who are the clients that were the easiest to sell? Who are the clients that paid you the most? Who are the clients that you were the most profitable on, right? Analyze who are your best fit clients and what do they have in common? If you're B2B, what was the company size of those clients? What was the decision maker you reach out to? Was it a VP of marketing? Was it the CEO? Right? Who was the person that actually responded to you and made the deal happen? Right? What industry were they in? Were they a private company, nonprofit? All of this, you can just look back at the past to basically design the future of how your marketing should focus on, right? So that's super important, because everything I can say about copy does not matter if you're not reaching the right person. Honestly, you could have pretty mediocre copy, but if you're really reaching the right person who has the problem you solve, like, you don't need to have this amazing creative copy, right? It definitely helps, right? And it's definitely important, especially in a more saturated landscape, but nothing can beat just reaching out to the right person in the first place with the relevant offer. But yeah, in terms of copy, I would really just think about the problem and the person, not the product. So think about the 3 Ps, right? If that helps you remember it. Most people, they try to sell their product when they're reaching out to someone with a cold outbound message. Hey, my name is this, we offer this, and here's the benefits and features, right? Instead of focusing on your product, talk more about the other person than you. Talk about the person and their problem, right? So let's think of an example business. What would be, maybe that's would be more fun. What's any
Let's take we're going after we want business to business consulting or business to business, independent business professionals, let's say.
Okay, awesome. So like selling a consulting service, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're selling consulting services to other companies, let's say.
Okay, cool. So let's say we're targeting business consultants, and what are we selling them?
Let's say we're selling them.
My service, maybe.
Yeah, we're selling
Something.
them LinkedIn and email marketing services. Let's go.
Okay, cool. Easy enough, relatable. Yeah. So if I'm targeting a business consultant, instead of me saying, hey, we have this amazing LinkedIn and email marketing machine, it's going to transform your business and get you 1 million sales, I shouldn't do that, because first of all, they don't even know what that means. They don't even know if it solves a problem that they have. They just see it as a sales pitch and they're going to delete it, right? Instead, I could say something like, hey, as a business consultant, you probably get a lot of clients from referrals, but it's really inconsistent. Would you be open to seeing how we helped another consultant in your exact industry double his business within 6 months? Can I send a case study? Just off the top of my head. Like, obviously, I would put in a real client case study there and a real client result. But you see how instead of me talking about myself, I'm talking about your industry. I know you have this problem. Would you like some more information, right? Because again, back to selling the next step. So that's just a really simplified version of like, that exact script would definitely work. But that's at least rather than the script, focus on the type, the thought process behind it, right? Show the person them in their industry and point out a problem that they have, and use specific language that they would relate to. Then they're going to listen to what you have to say, or they're going to want to talk to you more, because they're going to feel like okay, if this person understands my problem, then they probably have the solution. It's like a doctor. The doctor can really very discreetly and very descriptive just describe your problem, and he can diagnose you very well. You assume that he has a solution, right? Like, how would he know all this about my problem or my disease if he didn't have the solution, right? So it's more about showing you know them, and that's really going to build rapport and make them not only build rapport, but also make them aware that they have a problem. And that's how the brain works. When we know we have a problem, like, if something happens, like you see a problem in your business or in your personal life, you can't stop thinking about it, right? It's like an open loop in your brain. So when you can point out a problem they have, they're going to be like, well, what is this? They almost can't close the email if you at least nailed the right problem. They almost can't close the email because they're like, well, what is this? I need to solve this. Now they're thinking about it, right? So get them thinking about their problem and just allude to that you have the solution. You don't even need to say the solution. You could, of course, say a sentence or two about your offer, but just saying, hey, we've solved this for other people like you. Would you like to know how we did it? That's enough because that'll drive the curiosity, which is also very, tried and tested battle, marketing principle.
The other thing I like about what I heard you doing is, hey, well, let me tell you about someone else that we've done this with. So you're using case studies, a third-party validation of someone else's story of how they went from resolving that problem, i.e., folks, their pain, to bringing them to, i.e., what I call buying confidence, bringing them to a happier place, right? And so, but it's not you saying, hey, I'm AJ, hey, revenue-boost.net, I'm great, revenue boost isn't great.
Yeah,
We're
of course.
great. Our services are great. You should talk to me because we're great. You're not doing that type of thing. You're just softly planting and saying, hey, look, if you're interested in this, here's how what we did for someone else. Now that's going to invoke curiosity on most people's part. They're going to look at this as well. As you were even saying that, AJ, I was like, oh my goodness, I was part of a team where we took Intuit from a $7 million loss I'm sorry, $10 million loss every year on a $100 million division to a $7 million gain in 12 months. I could give that story, for example, right?
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
and so, I can pull from lots of case studies that we could use. So I look at, and I'm the user, I'm looking at the case study. I'm a consultant. I'm putting my brain hat on here as a consultant saying, okay, yeah, okay, that was interesting. And now I don't reply. Let's just say I don't reply. I go, well, that was kind of cool, but I don't reply. What do we do next?
Yeah, you follow up. And if you're doing this manually, you just follow up a couple of days later. If you're using an automated tool, because you can definitely automate LinkedIn and email outreach, you just design a sequence of 4 to 5 steps. Typically, what we'll do is maybe 4 steps over 2 weeks or so. Every 3 or 4 days, they're getting the next message. But simple reply. What I usually do for the second message is just a bump. So rather than saying the same thing again or saying it in slightly different wording, just my favorite one is, Doug, any thoughts? Or even just thoughts. 1 or 3 words, right? It makes it really feel like organic, like makes it feel like it's actually like a person wrote that to me. It wasn't just part of some marketing campaign, right?
Mhm.
And then really what you're doing is you're bringing them back to the first email. So rather than just constantly trying to resell them, just bump them to the first thing. And what you hear a lot is, oh my God, I'm sorry, I missed this. And then they'll tell you, whatever, whether it's a positive or a neutral response. But yeah, basically you want at least 2 to 3 follow-ups. Because most people, the reason they didn't reply is just because they missed it, right? So in some of our campaigns that we run for our clients, over half the leads come from the follow-ups, meaning they didn't respond to email 1, but they responded to email 2, 3, or even 4. And the reason is that is people are busy, right? So I think what the mistake a lot of people make is they assume that someone not replying is disinterest, right? Same for all of sales, right? You have a great sales call, you hit it off, you send a proposal, and they never reply, and you assume, oh my God, they hate me. I shouldn't have said that on the call. I offended them, whatever. They hated my proposal, and then you never follow up again. But how many times, it's probably happened to you a million times in your career, Doug, you've followed up with someone, and it could have been months or even years later, and they were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot we had this crazy thing going on. I completely forgot about getting back to you, but I'm so glad you reached out, right? You just have to be there. You didn't have to have anything super creative. You can be creative in the follow-up. And some of the later parts of the sequence, email 3 and 4, you can try a different angle, maybe giving something away. So you could try something different, but a lot of times following up is just showing up.
Yeah, and that's I'm laughing because we created a follow-up SaaS product, right? And for this
Yeah,
reason,
you did.
and so, it's people think that they're going to be a pain if they continue to follow up with people. Like they might be perceived as a pest. And what I always explain to them, like, no, if it's meaningful and relevant and you make it personalized, I mean, if you send a message every 10 minutes, yes, you'll be a pest.
Yeah, don't be like a creepy ex-girlfriend. Yeah.
Exactly. If they're gonna think you're gonna key their car or something at
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
right? So but if we're following up, and that's what I heard you say, like, just, bumping them, just 2 or 3 words. It's not really something that you're now making that personalized. And
No, yeah, you don't have to.
but you are in a way of most people won't do that, right? They're not going to be sending, hey, a couple, 2, 3 words, right? They're going to then come out and say 3, 4, 5 lines of, verbose stuff. So to me, when you were just saying, hey, pinging you, right? They know it, they'll feel it's a live person at that point doing it versus,
Exactly.
and that's what makes it personalized in that capacity. I'm not saying you're gonna go pull the net, everything off the web and create this whole personalized message. If you want to do that, we have software that will do that. But the point being is you're keeping the relationship top of mind aware just through the follow-up component of the process, and you're not being creepy about it. That's what I'm
Yeah,
hearing. Okay.
definitely. Yeah, I definitely don't advise for being creepy. But yeah, it's funny that you said I don't want to follow up without being pesty. I've thought that as well in my sales career. I think every person who's in sales, every business owner feels like I'm annoying this person if I follow up, but following up isn't pesty. It's only a pesty if you follow up in a pesty way, right? Which, like you
Yeah.
said, is sending a text message every 10 minutes. So it's more about how you do it, not so much that you're doing it. Um, and I also like to think of the frame of, hey, if I know this genuinely helps someone, right? Then it's my duty to get it in front of them. It's my duty to try again, right?
Well, I'll give people an example. Like there's been a real estate agent since I bought this home here who had been calling me every single 3 months, like clockwork, saying, hey, Doug, I'm just checking in. I'm just checking. I know you don't want to sell your house right now, maybe, but I want to let you know this is my neighborhood and I'm here when you're ready. And I have a very good friend who's in the real estate business, and actually two of them. And I talk to them, even though we're really good friends, maybe once every 6 months, you know what I mean? Because everybody's busy in life or whatever. Um, and the fact that this guy's been calling me every quarter now for 3 years going, I actually started gravitating toward him. I'm like, well, when I sell this house, maybe I'll give this guy a chance because he's working hard for it, right? Versus my good friends, who we are good friends. This might sound like I'm being a bad friend, but psychologically, this guy is now, because of the frequency of contact not being a pest and just coming up, he's now starting to level up with the relationships that I have because I feel like I know this guy just because he's caring enough to stay in touch. Well,
Yeah.
one quarter he missed. He didn't call me on the quarter, right? And I'm like thinking literally like, what happened to George? You know, he didn't call me this quarter so much. Then he called me a month later and he said, oh, I've been traveling. I'm, blah, blah, blah. Point being is that frequency of contact done in a respectful way builds relationships. And that's what I'm hearing you say. And AJ, I will tell everybody on this line, I don't know, maybe when you were, door knocking, right? You had to go back several times, and it might have even taken a period of time before somebody was, wanting to paint their house. I mean, it may not have happened in the first week for sure. I remember I followed up for 2 years with a company, and they finally said yes, and it was a company called NASCAR. And but it took 2 years to actually get my first order from from the
Hmm.
NASCAR. So the point being is that the more we stay consistent on that, the better we're going to be, because not everybody buys today, right? Marketo did this interesting study. AJ, I don't know if you have read this one, but they put out and they said Marketo and HubSpot did this together. 62% of all leads that come in online will close, but it takes a year or so to close them. in full. Now,
Wow. Yeah.
sounds high to me, right? On the close, but even if it's half off, most of the people are not staying with people for more than a month. And so if it happens over a year's period of time, then you're never gonna get it, right?
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the hardest part of sales is the initial, well, like we said, the top of the funnel. Getting someone who's a stranger to express some interest. That's the hardest part, right? So the
Yes,
fact that most salespeople give up after the fact that most salespeople will take one call, the guy doesn't buy, then they say, "Oh, forget about that guy." They never follow up again. That's insane because like you already did the hard part of building that first relationship. The follow-up is the easy part. You just have to be organized and disciplined and follow through, right?
right.
But yeah, I love the examples you brought up. I think, like you said, the real estate guy, that's an amazing example because you're building, we build trust through familiarity, right? Like your best friends are your best friends just because you spent the most time with them. You might not be the perfect match in terms of 8 billion people. You guys are exactly destined to have the best matching personalities. Your friends are like growing up. You just spend the most time with them, so you have the most trust, right? So follow-up kind of builds that familiarity. It's same as why big brands pay millions or really billions of dollars to just show us their logo over and over again, right?
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, that's why they spend that kind of money to create that familiarity. And and just because time passes doesn't mean that familiarity goes away. Because I mean, any of you, I don't know, you're out of school, let's say, out of high school, 10th, 11th, 12th grade type thing, right? And you go, I don't know, to Facebook and you see one of your old schoolmates and you haven't talked to them. This happened to me. I hadn't talked to somebody in 20 years. And I reached out and I just said, "Hey, how are you? I just saw your Facebook profile. I just was thinking maybe I'd check in, see how life's going." Oh, great. Reconnected, good friends. Let's have dinner, right? That type of thing. Because that familiarity breeds trust, as you're saying, that's part of the reason that folks, you want to continuously do what he said in step three. Step two is continue. No, step three, continue to follow. No, that was step two. Copy, list, copy, follow up. You want to continue to keep doing that. Let's move to
Yep.
the appointment now. So, okay, I've got them engaging with me. Everything's cool. We're simpatico. Everybody's on the same page. How do I ask for the appointment? Again, I'm playing I don't know. So how do I ask for the appointment? Like, is it a big deal or do I just ask for the appointment? I mean, how do
It's
we?
yeah, pretty simple. I would just assume the sale and say, hey, I mean, at the end of the day, like when you're sending an outreach message, you're still alluding to the fact that you have this, even if you're not necessarily spelling out your offer, you're still saying, hey, I can help you solve this. They respond, tell me more, they ask a question, or they say, I'm interested. Whatever they responded with, address that, then say, hey, if you want, we can hop on a call, dive into this further, and then also, you can get XYZ benefit. So just assume they want to call because if they reply, they have some interest. Obviously, like it's easier to chat over a call than email. So answer whatever it is they said, address that, and then just assume the call, give a calendar link. And the reason I say attach a benefit is because the sale you're making now is for someone to meet with you, right? And just because it's free for someone to hop on a Zoom does not mean it's free because you're taking something more valuable than money, their precious time, right? So always make sure that people should get something out of your sales call. If someone, I like to do my sales calls in a way where if they don't hire me, they still learn something, they got something, right? And you probably already are. Like, if most people, they have a more consultative sales process where they're not just shoving a pitch deck down your throat. They're usually asking questions and sharing insights and sharing some advice. So you might already be giving great value in your sales call. You just have to think, what is that value I'm giving? What's something that my clients or my prospects are walking away with? And just say that, right? And if you don't have anything that comes to mind, do something in your sales call going forward that will make someone get value either way, whether it's a resource you give them, whether it's I'll share insights with you from other clients on how they're succeeding in this area, right? Or I'll come up with a personalized plan for you on the call. So you're going to always have a much higher chance of getting someone to meet with you if you say, hey, we're going to meet and this is not going to be a waste of your time. You're going to get X, Y, and Z, even if you don't end up working with us.
And to that point, break down what those next steps should be in the sales process, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same principle as what you described with, top, mid, and bottom of the funnel, right? So we got to break down those little steps and stages. And if we do that, then we'll know not to move too fast on that particular You know, folks, what AJ's saying is don't expect to close the sale just because they got the phone call, right? And all immediately you're just going to launch into why you're so great and what the solution is. You're still building the relationship in that process of that first phone call. Now, may it conclude by the end of that phone call into a sale? There, perhaps it will, but it might need to go to a second call as well, right? Depending on what you're selling and how involved it is. If you're selling, I don't know, to airlines and you're selling jumbo jets, things that cost a huge amount of money that take a committee sometimes to make the decision, even if you're talking to the right people, there's likely going to be more calls. There's going to be more
Yeah.
meetings, right? If you're selling painting a house or the interior, it might close on the first conversation, right? So it's just a matter of what is your particular sales process? What does it need to look like? But what we're saying is on this call is here's the process to get you from point A to that mid of the funnel type conversation now that we're having, where we're going through the discovery process with that person. And you've got to have your sales skills from there. And AJ, any other final tidbits or tips or expert advice you would give people when doing this?
I think we covered the fundamentals. You have to really be clear on that ideal client. Everything starts there, right? Because if you're selling, in my case, I'm selling marketing services, right? If I'm selling marketing services and my target market is business owners, it's going to be really hard for me to then write a good email like I shared before. How am I going to be able to share a specific pain point or a relevant case study, right? Or a unique value proposition if I'm just selling something generic to everybody, right? So it's really about finding that specific thing. What's a specific problem I've solved for a specific market, right? How did I solve it? And let's build campaigns around that. Because then basically, the more specific your marketing is, the better it works. Just the targeting is easier. It's easier to find these people on LinkedIn and work with the search filters to build a list. It's easier to write something because you have exactly a person in mind, right? It's easier to follow up. It's easier, even if you're doing other marketing, it's easier to create content, a podcast, a YouTube video, a LinkedIn post, if you know exactly who you're writing that for, right? So it all starts there, I'd say.
Makes total sense. And folks, if you're still not convinced, go to match.com and take what they put you through to match you up with someone else, right? Because to me, that's the whole magic of match.com or eHarmony or any of those type of things. They're looking at your persona and personality and what you're looking for out in life, and they're matching up you with that other person who has very similar or the same values, beliefs, and desires in life. And that's exactly what AJ's talking about. If you do that, then you can talk the language. Think about it as dating again. You're out on a first date. Somebody's looking to, get married and have a family, and somebody's looking to just run around the world having fun, and wants no kids, none of that. Those conversations are going to be two very different conversations, and the two won't match up front.
Yeah.
And so if you do that in your messaging out, you're going to get a very low response or even a very high negative response rate in your, how many of you have got, 27, emails in the last month on a low cost SEO services if you own a business, for example? I know I'm getting, and AJ, to your point, I want people to understand this. To your point, even with the podcast here, we're getting pitched all the time on the podcast. And I can spot the messages coming through when they come through the queue of who hasn't even taken the time to even look at the podcast. I can spot that out of their headlines.
Yeah.
Because, when you get hundreds and hundreds of inquiries coming in, you can spot them very quickly. So AJ, as we wrap up here, how do people get a hold of you? How do they learn more about you?
Yeah, for sure. So my email is aj@revenueboost.net. If you want to connect, work with me, or even just ask for some advice based on some of if you're putting this into action. LinkedIn, it's AJ Casada. Facebook as well. And we also have a free course we can give out to your audience as well, so that you guys can reach out to me for that, or we can link it on the show on how to actually get started and build a campaign.
What's the URL for that? Or is it something that we should put in the show notes? I'll do both, but I was wondering.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. It's a long one. I have to get around to using like a bit.ly link for it or something. But yeah, we'll give it to you guys in the show notes.
We'll put that in the show notes for you folks. And I want to give, a shout out to AJ. AJ and I had the opportunity to spend we were in a mastermind group together, and we spent, few days together getting to know one another. I find him as a very upstanding and reputable human being, as well as a skilled guy in what he's doing. So, AJ, thanks for being on the podcast here. I really appreciate, very grateful you're here. And it's probably getting pretty late where you are because you're in Vietnam, right?
It is, yeah, it's about midnight over here. So you got my last few brain cells for the day, but I'm glad it was a good episode.
Well, we know you're having a new child coming up, your first child. So, firstly, congratulations.
Thanks.
And and as a dad of two, I want to tell you that the way you feel tired right now, just get used to it because that's going to continue to happen for the next
That's
whatever time period as your
good,
child
yeah.
comes along. So thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Doug.
Okay, hope you got a lot of notes. I do. The wonderful part about doing podcasts is you learn something every single time. And you want to take notes and review these episodes. I'm going to recommend that you listen to this one more than once and sit down with a pen and pad and really write out, got to have the right target list, right? We got to have the right copy. We got to have the right follow up. We got to have the right appointment setting process, and breaking down the stages and steps of your customer journey, from that top of funnel, mid funnel, and bottom of funnel. You'll learn a lot doing that. And you can apply these rules not only just to LinkedIn or to email, but you can apply those to everything in your company. And download AJ's free gift, on how to do this. And that is in our show notes. Um, as always, I'm going to tell you, go out and sell something today. Sell a lot of it, right? Play win, win, win. You win, they win, someone else wins. Make someone's day happy. Remember, in growing your revenue, you're selling. And when you're selling, you are making the statement that I'm here to solve your problem. I'm here to help you with an opportunity that you want. I'm here to help you reach your goal. And the more you do that, I think Zig Ziglar said, the more people you help, the more you will be helped. That's how it works. You don't have to discount. You can hold your value as long as you can convey your value on the revenue proposition that they're looking for, looking at it from a business point of view and from a personal point of view. And if you're looking to grow your revenue and you're looking to do it predictably, whether it's for yourself or your sales team, you want to optimize that process, or you're looking for a tool on and around how to follow up, because we built one, reach out to me at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Let me know what you're looking for. We'll have a conversation and see if we have a match. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, to your success.